I'm Korean teacher Hyunok-jang.
And I'm Gerhard. I'm learning Korean. In this lesson, we will learn irregular Korean verbs and adjectives ending in Batchim B. Unlike in last week's lesson with Korean verbs and adjectives ending in not all verbs and adjectives ending in Batchim B are irregular. So you will have to memorize which ones are. Let's first look at some regular verbs and adjectives that end in Batchim B, and then we learn the rules for the irregular verbs and adjectives with Batchim B and see which verbs and adjectives are irregular. What are irregular verbs and adjectives again? Unlike pronunciation rules, which only affect how certain sounds are pronounced in specific syllable combinations, irregular verbs and adjectives are all about how certain words conjugate when they meet specific grammatical endings. In this playlist, we practice with various grammatical forms. Don't worry if you haven't learned a grammatical form yet. The rules for irregular verbs and adjectives remain same across different grammatical structures. Irregular verbs and adjectives do not only change in pronunciation, but they change how they are written depending on the endings they encounter. In addition, while pronunciation rules always apply when a certain sound combination occurs, most of the rules for irregular verbs and adjectives, as in the case of today's lesson on verbs and adjectives ending in Batchim B, only apply to certain words and adjectives. That's why you need to remember which verbs and adjectives are irregular. So these two verbs and adjectives are regular.
Yeah. 입다.
입다, to put on, like to put on clothes. Yes.
복잡하다.
Complicated. So we have one verb and one adjective. These are regular. How do we conjugate them?
Just normal.
Just normal.
So 입다, 입어요 in present tense.
입어요 in present tense. It's 어요 because there is no a or o.
So 입어요.
입어요.
입었어요.
입었어요.
입고.
입고.
입지만.
입지만.
입어서.
입어서.
입을 거예요.
입을 거예요.
복잡하다.
복잡하다.
복잡해요.
복잡해요.
하다 becomes always 해요.
해요.
복잡해요. 복잡했어요.
복잡했어요.
복잡하고.
복잡하고.
복잡하지만.
복잡하지만.
복잡해서.
복잡해서.
복잡할 거예요.
복잡할 거예요. Why do we show you these regular verbs and adjectives first? Actually, most verbs and adjectives that end in Batchim B are irregular. It is therefore easier to memorize which frequently used words with Batchim B are regular and assume that all the other ones are irregular. Now, what's the rule for irregular verbs and adjectives ending in Batchim B? Here is the rule. The rule says that when Batchim B meets a vowel, Batchim B is removed first and U is added instead. Let's take a look at the word
귀엽다.
귀엽다 means
to be cute.
cute.
애기 곰은 너무 귀여워. 으쓱 으쓱. 아빠 곰, 엄마 곰, 애기 곰. 아기 곰이 너무 귀여워요.
What do we do to conjugate 귀엽다 into the present tense?
So, 귀엽다, we have to remove the first.
As always.
And the vowel is not a or o, so we add 어요.
어요.
So 귀엽어요. 귀엽어요.
귀엽어요. But we just learned that when Batchim B in irregular verbs or adjectives meets a vowel, in our case the vowel O, B is removed.
Yeah, it's removed. So 귀여워요.
귀여워요. But we also learned that after removing B, U is added.
Yeah, so U is added. So 귀여워요.
귀여워요.
What? 우어, 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 우어.
We learned that with the double vowels in lesson number 6 of the Korean alphabet playlist. Wo,
우어. So like, 귀여워요.
귀여워요. The present tense of 귀엽다.
Yeah. So 귀엽다, 귀여워요.
귀여워요. As mentioned before, most verbs and adjectives ending in verb or adjective stem b are irregular. Let's have a look at some examples.
두껍다,
두껍다 means thick,
쉽다,
easy,
어렵다,
difficult. 한국어가 어려워요.
독일어도 어려워요. 그럼 영어도 어려워요?
아니요, 쉬워요.
뜨겁다,
Hot,
차갑다,
cold,
덥다,
hot like in weather,
춥다,
cold like in weather,
가볍다,
light in lightweight,
무겁다,
heavy,
시끄럽다,
noisy,
더럽다,
dirty,
무섭다,
scary,
가깝다,
close,
어둡다,
dark,
귀엽다,
cute,
맵다,
spicy,
고맙다,
thankful,
반갑다,
glad,
아름답다,
beautiful,
눕다,
to lie down,
곱다,
gentle,
돕다.
to help. Notice that only to lie down,
눕다,
nupta, and
돕다.
topta, to
Help.
help, are verbs. All the rest are adjectives. And remember what we said before, it's probably easier to learn which verbs and adjectives ending in Batchim are regular, and remember that these are regular and assume that all the others are irregular, because there are many irregular verbs ending in Batchim
Mm.
Most of the irregular verbs ending in Batchim are irregular. Let's look at a few more examples and conjugate them into different grammatical structures. Let's take the example of
덥다.
덥다, means hot like in weather.
너무 더워요.
How do we conjugate 덥다 into present tense?
더워요.
더워요. So just like we did before, with cute, we remove b and add u. U and o become wo.
와. So 더워요.
더워요 become the double vowel wo.
So 더워요. 덥다. 더워요.
덥다, 더워요. So we remove da like always, and because the last vowel is not a or o but o, we add oyo, but we remove b, we add u, and o become wo, the double vowel wo. 더워요.
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 And 덥다. In the past tense, the last vowel is not a or o.
But
So
o,
없어요. Is removed because of the vowel. And u is added.
더웠어요.
Yeah, 더웠어요. 더웠어요. 더워요. 더웠어요.
더워요, 더웠어요.
And with go, it's just normal. 더, go, because this is a consonant.
Not a vowel, So b is not removed. Da is removed as always. Verb stem, adjective stem is top, 덥고.
덥고. Then this one?
Same.
Same.
덥지만.
덥지만.
Go is and to connect two sentences. And 지만 is but.
어서.
Also is because.
There is.
Same as here and here. There is no a or o, so we add also. Also is a vowel, so we need to remove b. We add u instead, and we get
더워서.
더워서.
네, 더워서.
더워서. And then the future tense. Here another rule applies. Let us explain. So here is the rule. When b meets as for example in the imperative,
으세요, 세요.
the future tense,
을 거예요. Or 으러 가다 오다.
으러 가다 오다, and other grammar rules we learn in the Korean for Beginners playlist. Not only is b removed and u added, but is also removed because it meets u. So u in a way replaces Let's look at the example we just discussed in the future tense. So we still have our adjective 덥다, hot as in weather, and we want to combine it with irregular with the future tense.
So 덥다, we have to remove 다 first.
Da first as always. So we have 덥. Now the thing is that here we have a Batchim, right?
Yes.
And if we have a Batchim, we add
을 거예요.
을 거예요. That means b in our irregular verb meets 덮을 거예요.
Yes.
But we have to remove b
because of vowel.
because of the vowel but then we add u.
U replaces
U replaces so the vowel of the second syllable now becomes u instead of So we have
더울 거예요.
더울 거예요. So there is one extra step if Batchim b in irregular verbs and adjectives meets in the next syllable. And that's the case with a few grammar rules, like with the future. In this case, because you saw in the list before that we have very few verbs, imperative would only be possible with verbs and not with adjectives. But whenever a grammar ending that begins with attaches to an irregular verb or adjective with Batchim b, this extra step is required. Is removed or actually replaced by the u that's added after removing b. Now let's look at all the rest of the examples.
덥다, 더워요, 더웠어요, 덥고, 덥지만, 더워서, 더울 거예요. 춥다, 추워요, 추웠어요, 춥고, 춥지만, 추워서, 추울 거예요.
추워. 추워. 여기 살스부르크는 너무 추워요.
살츠부르크는 춥지만 너무 예뻐요.
귀엽다, 귀여워요, 귀여웠어요, 귀엽고, 귀엽지만, 귀여워서, 귀여울 거예요. 맵다, 매워요, 매웠어요, 맵고, 맵지만, 매워서, 매울 거예요.
야드 씨, 한국 음식은 매워요.
오스트리아 음식은 안 매워요.
한국 음식은 맵지만 맛있어요.
네.
고맙다, 고마워요, 고마웠어요, 고맙고, 고맙지만, 고마워서, 고마울 거예요. 반갑다, 반가워요, 반가웠어요, 반갑고, 반갑지만, 반가워서, 반가울 거예요.
아저씨!
Ah,
아저씨 정말 오랜만이에요.
네, 정말 반가워요. There are two words, 덥다 and 곱다, which are exceptions to the rule for irregular verbs and adjectives with Batchim b. 곱다 means something like pretty, beautiful, soft, or gentle, but there are other words that are rather used in everyday Korean, so we will not look at that. The rule for that would be the same as for 덥다, but we now look at the exception of 덥다. Here is the rule. If 덥다 meets a vowel in the next syllable, b is removed. That's expected. But then o is added instead of u. Let's take a look.
So 돕다.
덥다, to help.
네.
Yes. 덥다 plus 아요, 어요. 아요, 어요, present tense, right?
Yes.
Then b, we remove da.
돕다.
Then b, 받침 b meets a vowel. Vowel a or o. B gets removed.
Yes. Removed.
That's expected, but here's the exception. The exception is that instead of adding u, we add o.
도, 오, instead of 우.
Do, o. Now, what happens when we have a or o as the last vowel of our verb or adjective stem? If the last vowel of our verb or adjective stem is a or o, we add ayo instead of oyo. Before it was always oyo because we always added u.
도, 오, 유, and 와.
와, 도와요.
도, 와, 요. 도와요. 돕다, 도와요.
However, if 덥다 and 곱다 meet in the next syllable, u is added again and not o. So, for example, the original rule applies again to the ending 을세요, 세요 to the imperative, or to the future.
을 거예요. Or 으러 가다 오다.
Exactly. Let's also take a look at that. So we have 덥다 with a grammar structure that starts with in this case the imperative, but it could also be the future. Any grammar structure that starts with so da gets removed.
Yeah.
B meets
으세요. Because 돕다 has 받침.
덥다 has 받침.
도, 으세요.
돕으세요, but B gets removed because it always gets removed. And then instead of B, we again get U and not O. Yes. And the U replaces
도우세요.
So if we have a grammar like this that doesn't start with we have an exception. If there's a grammar structure starting with added, this is not an exception again. This is the irregular verb and adjective rule for Batchim b. Now here's the thing. We've learned that 덥다 is an exception to the rule for irregular verbs and adjectives with Batchim b. It's complicated, but more often than 덥다, we use the verb
도와주다.
도와주다. And 도와주다 is regular because we conjugate 주다. 도와주세요 is made up of 덥다 and the grammar 아, 오, 주세요 that we learn in lesson number 36 of the Korean for Beginners playlist. 주세요 is used when we ask someone to do something for us. So 돕다 and 도와주다 both mean help. One is to give help, one is to help, but the meaning is the same. But then we use 도와주다 more often than 돕다. So you have to know the rule, but you usually don't have to use it. Instead of 돕다, you can only learn how to conjugate 주다 from 도와주다.
돕다 plus 주다. 받침 부 is removed anyway because of vowels our 도 and 오 is added. Because of 오, 주다 is added. 주다. So 도와주다. So 돕다 to help, 도와주다 to give help. 도와주다. help. 도와주세요. 도와주세요. 아저씨,
네?
도와줘요. 고마워요. 도와주세요. Help me.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.